some opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, movie fans, to another Anatomy of a Movie here on Popcorn Talk. If you haven't already done so, be sure to subscribe, whether on youtube.com/Popcorn Talk Network or on iTunes by searching Anatomy of a Movie, and rate and comment. Today, by the sounds of it, we are talking about The Hobbit. Which one? The last one. The Battle of the Five Armies, which is definitely a better title than There and Back Again. Even though there was definitely controversy early on.
Well, for this movie...
For the movie that was
yes.
made?
For the movie that was made, I agree.
For the story itself?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But
and
the movie, yes.
Those are the voices of Sara Stretton.
Hello, everybody.
And Demetri Panos.
Hobbitses. Hello, movie fans.
It feels like just a year ago we were doing Desolation of Smaug.
Totally feels like a year. Not a day has gone, Not a day more or less.
So let's overall impressions of this movie. Let's start there, and then we'll do all impressions of the series, and then we'll dive in.
Oh, that was more than I was expecting. All right.
What were you expecting? Why don't you leave
I
next
didn't know
time?
I was gonna have to do like my review of Battle of Five Armies, and then I didn't know I was gonna have to review The Hobbit as a contender of. Okay, let's think.
I mean, one should have expected it.
Okay.
It is a trilogy.
The Hobbit, Battle of Five Armies. I thought there was a lot of action. There were some things I really liked and some things I had a problem with. Does it live up to the other 5 movies that were made? Well, it lives up to 2 of the other movies that were made. It lives up to the Hobbit trilogy. Does the Hobbit trilogy in general live up to the Lord of the Rings trilogy? No. Did anyone really expect it to? No. I didn't expect it to, at least. I think some of the actors were pretty strong, but I was pulled in and out through my watching of Battle of Five Armies. There were sections I really liked and sections that I thought were overacted or just were repetitive or unnecessary. I agree with a lot of the added story that they created for this film outside of the book, even though some people are against it. There are some things that I think that was very smart for them to do and to explore, but some things they kind of let fall off the wayside and didn't bring full circle, and some things they brought almost like it ended like 8 times for me.
They kept stirring.
Yeah, they kept stirring. So overall, I'm very glad that I saw this movie. I'm still probably going to buy it. I'm still going to watch these movies, but it's on a different tier than Lord of the Rings for me.
Enough.
And I agree with that. I'm going to start off with... I think that Peter Jackson does deserve a round of applause. Reason being is he was set up with an insurmountable wall to climb and heap over, or a mountain, you can say, to get over. Let's just, I want to digress just a little bit of history. He had done the Lord of the Rings, fantastic trilogy, fantastic storytelling. He'd won the Academy Award. I truly believe he was set to leave Middle-earth. And in fact, he was. When the decision came to do The Hobbit, they were going to do it. Guillermo del Toro was supposed to be directing. He was working on a screenplay for it. And at the time, they were going to do 2 movies, which is sort of egregious for a book that was 250, not even 300 pages. But okay, and it's Guillermo del Toro. He may have breathed some new life, or at least given us a different look, and maybe similarly like a different movie, because The Hobbit is a different book than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Due to a series of unfortunate circumstance, legalities and such, Guillermo del Toro forced to drop out. He couldn't do it. Now they don't have a captain. They're rudderless. So they go back to, and they being Warner Brothers, they have to go back to Peter Jackson once again. And he picks up the reins. It's like, okay, I'll go back to Middle Earth again. And then they say, oh, but we want to now make this 3 movies. Oh, okay. Well, let's make this 3 movies, and now I got to fill this out. And I
don't know if it was really them saying 3 movies. I think after they got into the storyboarding process, which Peter Jackson was always involved in, even when it was Guillermo del Toro.
But it was 2 movies. Yes, and it was originally supposed to be 2 movies, and then you go into these appendices, and then you go into creating characters that were never in the books, and they had to flush out 3 movies. And we've all talked here that, God. It was an egregious greed and money grab thing, and we've said that the Hobbit series may not live up to Lord of the Rings, but given what Peter Jackson, being the cards that he was dealt and what he had to deal with and how he had to do this, he goes back to Middle Earth, and I think he did the best he could, given what he had to work with. And with the Battle of Five Armies, I think it was the better of the 3 Hobbit movies. I think the series as a whole doesn't stand up to the Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of been there, done that. This movie I felt was exciting. It was visceral, but I think that a lot of the battling that took place, as great as it was, to me it was a lot of razzle-dazzle to hide the fact that we really don't have too much of a story, and whatever we made up, it's sort of kind of stupid and silly, so don't pay attention so much because we're going to go back to the fighting, which looks great. And it did. And
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
They expanded a 1-chapter Battle of Five Armies into a 45-minute battle sequence.
Yeah.
In which so much was relied on CGI that I did not feel any sort of gravitas. I was like, oh, there's a lot of people and they're kind of little massive ants blowing around.
I didn't say gravitas. I said that it looked good. Okay. I didn't say that there was any gravitas.
Yeah, because to me I was like, oh, people are dying. It's fine. Like, you're not focused on any of it. It's not like when you're in Helm's Deep and you feel that chanting, the rain is pouring and it builds up and there's this intensity that should be at the start of war. And if you have 5 armies, this should be escalated, and each outpouring of people that come should feel like a new source of energy instead of like, oh, this is gonna now take longer.
You know what, they needed to do something, and I get it. Again, it just sort of kind of fluffed up and took away from like these sort of things that happen with characters that never existed. So it sort of tried to force emotion on me where I was invested to begin with.
Here's the thing, I think,
What about you? I mean,
Phil. And also, what is your history with Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit? Are you a fan?
No,
I don't speak for him, but
I'm asking.
She is asking. You know what? I've never found. I actually like the Hobbit movies, ironically, of all things, better than Lord of the Rings. You wonder why?
I do. Why?
I cannot explain this. I used to. Every holiday season, I used to rewatch Lord of the Rings, and I'd be like, I don't get it. It's not good. I don't get it. It's not good. And so the Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug, to me, that was finally a turning point. It's like, this in itself, this can be fun, right? I think the second movie is the most fun of these 3. I think where one of the things that suffers, I'm really tired of, I'm tired of prequels coming after the fact. So had this, again, I know it was a gamble. They wanted to make Lord of the Rings, and they didn't know if they can. I get it. Let's make the one that we know is going to sell versus starting with The Hobbit. But had you done The Hobbit, and if you wanted to do 3 movies, maybe fine. But you would have built up into that. I'm tired. And Sarah's, I know she's going to have a lot to say. I have 30 more seconds.
Okay.
Ready? Okay. And so, Battle of the Five Armies to me. It was there was so much that was being put into it, and we were building up to this epic thing. However, they had to pull themselves back and be like, whoa. We now also have to keep in mind that we can't make this more epic than Lord of the Rings because it's the one ring to rule them all. So we can't put more emphasis on this, even though at this time in this history, this is the biggest thing that is going on.
Right.
Okay. I have so much to say. I'm going to be really, really, really bad at sticking on a straight line today because he says things and then I just want to talk about them. I have lots to say about this movie.
All of them.
Okay, so what I will agree with Phil on is that it was very hard for them to make this prequel after Lord of the Rings, being that they didn't really treat it as a prequel. To me, they took way, like, I like subtle references to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I liked the character name drops. I liked
what is subtle? I mean, because just so we have a comparison. Him telling Legolas, "Go to the north. You will find Strider. To see Strider." I won't tell you his real name. Subtle or not subtle?
I mean,
yeah,
that's not subtle.
Okay,
but referencing, for instance, when they do. One thing I didn't like is how they lingered on the One Ring so much and put this foreboding music that you knew it was evil. Like, if this was a prequel...
But that wasn't subtle.
I mean, no, I'm just telling you one thing I don't like. I'm not referring to subtle. I did preface this statement with the fact that one thing I didn't like was how that it was continuously focused on as this is the One Ring that's evil, it's evil, it's evil. I'm like, that's not what this movie is about. We have no reason to, besides the fact that we all know the ring is evil, to suspect it so far. It hasn't presented itself that way. And it should have just been part of the movie. It should have been just used as a tool. And maybe at the very end, there can be some sort of the addiction of can't being able to take it off or some reference. But from the very beginning, it was always like, the ring is bad. You all remember what the ring did. I'm like, this isn't about that's not what this movie's about. You have an entire trilogy devoted to that ring. Talk to me right now about the mountain and the gold and whatnot. All of that bothered me.
Fair enough, but I think with this you had a shot at taking the Arkenstone and kind of that the comparison was being made a little bit, and I think that should have been fleshed out a little bit. But I like that.
To the Arkenstone. Yeah. Can we talk about that?
No, well, before we go off that tangent, I mean, because here I'm gonna.
I have a lot to say.
I'm gonna because that. I definitely want to go back to that because that was an issue that I have. And again, that's razzle-dazzle to forget about everything else and do whatever. But going back to your point regarding the ring, okay, this trilogy is called The Hobbit. One of my biggest problems is this, of the trilogy, and particularly this movie, is who's our main character?
It was
not The Hobbit.
It's not The Hobbit. It's not Bilbo Baggins. Now, if you've read the book, and I get it, I understand, but the book is seen through the eyes of this Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, and his adventure going through this. Now, I get that you have to flush things out because there are certain parts, particularly the Battle of the Five Armies, in which Bilbo Baggins is in a factory. He gets conked out early on, and it's basically a chapter. He finds out about it when he wakes up. I get that you got to fill that out. However, it's either Thorin Oakenshield or it's the Bowman. Like, I'm trying to figure out who am I following in this movie, and that's a big problem because it's so big and it keeps on changing perspective a lot. And it should have just stayed with Bilbo Baggins.
But to me, I mean, I would say it's like Peter Pan, right? Peter Pan's not about Peter Pan. It's really more about Wendy, I would say. Because Peter Pan stays, he does an arc, right? So in this case, I always saw this as the story of Thorin. Just like, I mean, ultimately, while Lord of the Rings is, yes, Frodo's story, it's really about Aragorn and becoming the king. That, to me, is the,
Okay, so let's take this as it is, and this story did transfer to being about Thorin. Battle of Five Armies is pretty much about Thorin. And if you look at his arc, there were so many things to me that were unsatisfying. Number one, I'm sorry, I did not like his internal, like, I'm suffering and becoming my grandfather being swallowed by gold moment. Okay. I thought it didn't come for me in a real moment. He had been spending his days down there for, like, there was no, like, catalyst. There was no thing that pulled him out. It was like, oh, one day I've decided to be reflective, and all of these things are now in my mind, and I realize what people are saying. Like, he's hearing the whispers of Gandalf and of Bilbo and everyone, but there was no spark. There was no spark that led to that discovery that made him be self-reflective. It could have been the acorn.
I think it was Bilbo, to be honest. I mean, I actually liked the sequence.
But you have to search for that. It wasn't something that, like, I thought it came on, like, out of nowhere, and I didn't see why he all of a sudden started having these self-realizations. Number two, he has this whole thing about the Arkenstone that never gets resolved.
No.
Nothing happens. And if this is his story, I don't care if it was you had his funeral and you put it above him and it rested with. I don't know what you had to do, but it was completely let go by the wayside.
Oh,
and if this is his story, then that's just not even mentioned.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened. That was one of my issues because I got to the end of the movie and I was like, what happened to who has the Arkenstone?
Bard.
Where'd it go?
Also, who's in control of the mountain now? They left that completely like, who's in control of all of the dwarves? Who is the leader?
Yeah. No.
This whole thing was started because they were supposed to unite the dwarves under the Lonely Mountain and return to their home and bring all of the clans or whatnot together. And if you're developing this into the Battle of Five Armies as Thorin's story, then at least something should be coming out of it. If he is going to die, the Arkenstone should still be found, and there should be some sort of culmination. But there should be some sort of culmination of his death and whatnot, bringing the dwarves together back to their homeland.
Yeah. No.
That's coming out in a series of short films.
Yeah.
All of these things did not happen. Really? Because they just gave me almost 3 hour long films and didn't answer the main question from the first one. I don't understand.
I don't know what the first. Yeah, I don't even go.
I think for me with these movies, you can. I mean, there's so many things that we can literally nitpick the death of this. We can, and we'd be here for 10 hours nitpicking and still not be done.
I don't think I'm nitpicking. I think I'm pointing out a very crucial part of the story.
I understand, but I get it. You're a very passionate Hobbiter.
No, but I think it's even for a non-passionate Hobbiter. I think for anybody who likes movies, I mean, that was one of my issues. I mean, and I like this series. I've read all the books, and like I said, I love Lord of the Rings and what that brought to the table. I just think that they bit off more than they can chew, and they added stuff that didn't necessarily need to be. They purposely padded for 3 movies, and I think it's obvious throughout the entire series. And to Sarah's point, there were a lot of threads that were just left there. They were just left hanging that wasn't closed. They weren't closed up.
Yeah.
And my issues were outside of the Arkenstone. I had my issues were the Keely and Neely. Okay, so Neely with Toriel, who Toriel doesn't exist.
Toriel, terrible.
She doesn't exist, and Neely dies, and. There's this whole thing where she's holding him, and I'm like, where the hell is this coming?
Feely?
Is it Feely that was?
Neely's the one who gets held up.
All right, so he gets executed. Right, so he gets executed. All right.
No, I think that's Feely.
No, I think Feely is the one that she loves.
Hold on.
I thought it was Neely.
Am I completely wrong? I'm so sorry, guys.
There's so many hobbits.
Well, that's another problem that I have in this movie is that the dwarves to me were almost indistinguishable.
There's only one hobbit.
It's Keely. Keely confesses his love for Toriel.
All right, so it's Keely.
Oh, I'm sorry. Totally messed that up. So my bad, guys.
But that's the problem. In a book, you can do it easily because you don't have to focus on you can just write. You can say there's 40 dwarves and that's it, and just be. But in a movie, their presence still has to, no matter what, they're got to be on the call sheet.
Yeah. Well, so you have Toriel here with Keely, and there's this whole you would have thought that they were married, had kids, and I don't know how long they were together, if they were ever together, and to me it seemed forced. It seemed to be something that was forced. And then what the hell happens to Toriel? Where does she go? What happens to her? It was they just leave her there. It's if this is love, I don't want it. And then the camera goes away. What happened to you? Nah, it's never resolved. And then my other major problem was another forced emotion. Now, let me go back to this love scene, this crying scene. It didn't work with me, but the audience that I was with and everything, I heard sobbing.
Which one?
People were sobbing.
The love is real.
The love is real.
Oh,
the love is real.
That one.
Yeah. Sobbing. Okay, so it worked. It worked for some people. You didn't sob? Did you sob? No, you didn't.
No, I don't.
That's another thing. I didn't tear up this entire movie.
No.
I didn't tear up in Lord of the Rings.
I did.
By the way, we should also mention, because we did Desolation of Smaug, so if you want to get our breakdown of actors and things like that,
sure,
do it with that one. Watch that one.
Hold on.
Because we're not gonna fully do that on this one.
And so then my other, it was one of the last, it was towards the end again. There was the whole scene with Legolas and his dad, And there's the scene, and the ghosts go to the north, go seek Strider, blah blah blah. Okay, all right, sort of a cool moment. But then it's like this throwaway line. Oh, and by the way, your mother loved you. What? Like, what you're throwing in a family drama, you're throwing in a plot point that I have no idea what you're talking about, and only to gain emotion for something that has never been mentioned.
Well, the mother died.
It's mentioned.
The mother died, yeah.
Yeah, it's mentioned once before. I'm blaming this in my mind on they cut some footage we didn't see, because it is mentioned when they go north to, like, when they see the other army coming, and he's like mentioning to Teriel, like, oh, well, my mother died up here, and my father never talks about it. So it is mentioned one singular time before.
Great.
Yeah, but I think it's cut footage. But I have so much to say about what you just said, because I agree with you a lot on a lot of
I just find that there were so many. And again, it goes back to my, okay, so this is sort of silly. We're not going to do anything. So let's go back to fighting again, because we're gonna dazzle you with the special effects, which look great. But then towards the end of the movie, the best scene, the one scene that rang so true to me, and even the way that it was filmed, was the scene with Bilbo and Gandalf sitting down on the ledge. That scene I loved, and apparently there was dialogue between them. Peter Jackson loved the way that everything was playing out. He cut out all the dialogue and just let it play silently, and I thought, wise decision. It played out perfectly, and I got everything that needed to be
So let me ask you this.
taken from that.
Let's take broader strokes, right?
Broad strokes.
Because if you look,
just
if you
Go ahead.
you will, I will give you your chance to say it, Sara Stretton. Don't worry.
Okay.
If you had a Twitter, you can talk more about it. But the point is, if you look at this from a structure standpoint, they hit all the things right. So going back to Desolation of Smaug,
Okay.
we end on a down note, meaning
Correct.
our heroes are down, and inevitable doom is coming.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we pick up. That's where we pick up Battle of the Five Armies. But to me, I just watching, I was like, I didn't want, that should have been in the last movie. I know structure-wise, that's not the way you should end. You shouldn't end the second movie on a high note.
Sure.
It has to be on the down note. But again, if you're going and then in terms of this, the structure, right? You build up these armies, right? So at first it's so we've just decimated Lake Town. We gotta go against the dwarves, okay, and then the elves come, and they're here for the wrong reasons, and then all of a sudden the orcs come, and then blah blah. So it's builds in the right way. It has all the and then the emotions, like on paper when you're plotting it out. Yes, okay, this is where the emotional beat is, blah blah. So, but we're just doing it because structure dictates it, rather than it's dictated by what we previously have going. Makes sense. Now have at it, Sara Stretton.
From a structural standpoint, like the building up to the battle, I understood, like, I liked how they went to the orcs, and like how those pieces of the puzzle were going to come to this lonely mountain place. That I understood. But I was getting more at regarding this Turiel character who doesn't exist in the books. They seem to make up things that just never really had the payoff that they wanted.
But again, because
Okay, this is what I will say. She didn't make me cry, but I really did enjoy watching her character through each one of these films. I thought that
when she was badass, she was great.
And I thought acting-wise, of most of the people, like, I actually believed her. I felt she was consistent. I really liked her role. I was fine with the love triangle, although it was strange to me that they were like so in love so quickly and never really had a whole time together.
No.
But I mean, fine. But I also was shocked that they did leave her so inconclusive. On top of that, I had predicted she was going to die.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Because if you're creating a character for a specific chunk of time, then it's kind of weird that she exists in Lord of the Rings, but we just never hear of her. Like, I did not expect her to make it out of this film alive at all.
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. I mean, like, sometimes in this kind of fiction, you create these characters because you know that your mainstays aren't going to die. It's one of the things, like, if you're writing a Star Wars novel or a Star Trek novel, you ain't killing off Luke Skywalker, but you bring in these outside characters that you can kill off, or you don't have to. And I felt the same way you do. You're bringing in a character. She has emotional heft. She's turning into a fan favorite. She was great. She was good. But I think, okay, they got to kill her in some way. Maybe make an emotional
And I
thing.
think, exactly, they could have very much used that as an emotional drawing point, because some of the kills that they did use did not resonate or were not important. And I mean, I know in the book, I'm going to pronounce the names right now, is Keely and Philly, like, die in protecting Thorin. And they're defending him.
Right.
And and like, I'm okay, I understand, like, the execution thing did not bother me in that he was executed. It bothered me that I wasn't as upset over it. Because it wasn't really built up. And then I just felt like they lost it on that. I felt that they lost the emotional ties, and they did. It just was a letdown, and you're like, oh, that's disappointing. But I wanted to feel for them.
Me too.
I thought, for me, what I was really, I thought they were building, and they didn't quite succeed. I was most curious, how did Saruman go over to Sauron? And we see that battle, and again, that 3D kaleidoscope of Sauron rising. But so then...
Well, we can talk a little bit about that scene in general. First, it should be mentioned that in production or in pre-production, and when they were trying to figure out how they were going to do The Hobbit, one thing that was mentioned was doing The Hobbit in one film, the book, and then doing a transitional film that happens in between the two, that happens before Lord of the Rings and after The Hobbit. And the reason that they wanted that was one of the specific notes was seeing how he what had happened. They wanted to focus on, I want to say, Gollum's adventure, how he got to Mordor. That was one of the things they wanted to show. And also how Sauron kind of took over Saruman, or like gained his allegiance. Exactly. And I feel like he had like a glint in his eye when we had the entire necromancer fight scene, but it wasn't something that was fully developed. And that whole scene where we do get to see the White Council fight off the race before they've taken an actual physical form and they're still like in shadow, like that's all created.
Yeah, it was made up. Yeah,
but and part of it is
there was no linkage, and that bothered me too, because I was like, what's he doing here? Like, I just didn't, like, because we know what happens to it. We know that we know who he falls allegiance to, and I'm like, this is sort of like he's fighting these people, but we know.
But the bigger point to me is, we've spent literally by this point we've spent 3 movies kind of getting to it, right?
Sure.
What's the crazy wizard's name?
Sauron.
No.
Gandalf.
No. He's got the goo, for lack of a better term, I could say.
Oh, he's talking about.
You mean the guy with the
Radagast?
Radagast, right?
Radagast.
Since Unexpected Journey, we've been following this, things are changing, things are happening, things are moving, and we've kind of built up in Battle of the Five Armies. We build up to the Battle of the Five Armies, but for 3 movies we've been building up to this location, this scary, and in one scene we not defeat it, but we subdue it.
Well,
and we'll deal with it later in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, this is what when this scene presented itself, when you have Galadriel enter and she's beautiful and she's just walking in the white and she picks up Gandalf and they have this like kind of
non-sensual moment,
love but connection moment, I was fine. And when you bring in Lord Elrond and when you bring in like Radagast comes in to save it and you bring in Sauron, like I was excited for their fight scene. I was like, oh great, we actually get to see the powers that be in action, because a lot of times we get to see them talking and having a lot of authority, but we don't really get to see them actively participate.
Yeah, it's like Yoda going up against Count Dooku.
Completely.
But again, I don't know. My favorite part of it was that we got to see Cate Blanchett go badass on everybody, and everything else gets sort of kind of overshadowed. And
that was also an interesting moment, because to me it kind of didn't make too much sense.
That scene
I
doesn't make sense
understand,
if you think
because
about
Galadriel is very powerful.
Yeah,
we all know that. She's an extremely powerful woman, and we do get to see this like dark X-ray version of her in Lord of the Rings, but it's referenced in an evil way. It's referenced in like evil like comes into her presence and she passes the test, and so we've seen her in this light before.
Absolutely.
So I was very confused why we were seeing it her in her again. Like to me she's very powerful, and she should have been powerful with the light of a star, not in this dark, creepy turning into like a witch face presentation and shunning him back so he's a light that fades into the darkness. It was strange.
Yeah,
it was strange.
I thought
it had some great potential. I think it started really well, and I was really excited to see all these people fight. And like, I did like that she was the one who stepped up and like banishes him and creates like, in a way, creates the eye.
Yeah, it
was strange.
A lot of smoke and mirrors to hide away from the fact that what did that scene really mean? It looked great. And yet again, I mean, it's funny because I was thinking throughout this whole thing, and I mentioned Yoda before too. Gandalf really isn't the greatest wizard. I mean, this guy gets captured more often and loses certain fights, and like it's just like Yoda. Yoda's not
until he becomes Gandalf the White.
Gandalf the White, but I mean, even Yoda falls to Count Dooku. He can't take out the Emperor. And I was just like, and of course, Count Dooku is Christopher Lee. Got to make that thing there. But I was just like, God, Gandalf captured again. He's in a cave. Like, how do they're almost like the Jedi Council. It's like, how do these people not feel what the hell is going on? And aren't they supposed to be wicked strong? And Galadriel saves the day.
Supposedly, if you like get into Lord of the Rings, like lore a little bit, not to dive too much into it, but there are some sort on who Gandalf is and how long he's been around. There are some sort of limitations on the powers he can reach before he turned to be Gandalf the White.
Right.
And what we know is he's lived for thousands of years, prospectively, and like he's known Galadriel for thousands of years. And there is limitations in place. It's like kind of like this is a horrible reference, so don't kill me for it, but it's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. But it's kind of like the genie who has crazy powers in Atlantis, but he's changed the lamp so he can't use all of his cosmic powers.
Sure.
I don't know how to better. Just do you understand what I'm saying?
I see where you're going. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
But I agree that he is captured a little too often.
A lot. And he's saved by a butterfly or an eagle.
He's made great friends with them.
And I know that that's heavily referenced in the books. But again, to me, it was one of those things that was sort of kind of filler because we don't hear about Sauron at all. The eye that's not in the Hobbit. It's not, I don't know.
This is the other weird factor of that. If they defeat the necromancer,
right,
why is there no repercussion on his army? Because if you look at Lord of the Rings, when they take down Sauron's massive eye tower, and it crumbles to the ground,
sure,
all the ground immediately crumbles and everyone falls into the pits of the earth, blah, 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 blah. So we see him banished, defeated
well, he wasn't killed.
No, but he was definitely hurt.
Yeah.
And this had absolutely no reflection on any of his armies, who didn't seem to notice at all.
Yeah, well, let's also not forget that the necromancer in The Hobbit, the book, again, is a throwaway line. It's something that Gandalf goes away to handle, and then he comes back and said, oh yeah, I had to handle this necromancer guy. Like, you don't even see the necromancer. It's just an aside that's like, I had to go off and take care of this issue. And he comes back, okay, so I had to take care of this necromancer. They
just make this huge thing about, like, Thorin's gonna go get, I can't pronounce his name, the white orc. No, it's Arog. I'm so bad at pronouncing names. I'm so much better when I read.
It's like Dementor or something like that.
No, it's one of those things where, when you, like, read something and you, like, pronounce it differently in your head. But he's, like, his whole thing is, like, he's gonna cut off the head of the snake. And in the back of my head, I was like, Isn't the head of the snake the necromancer who's already gone? That's funny.
Well, they said he wasn't at full strength without his ring.
Yeah.
But he was the one who created this whole orc army thing. He was the one they were reporting to.
I was like,
thank you.
So.
He's like their leader. He is technically the head of the snake, and he has been banished. And they're still going, and no one is affected.
Yeah, but it didn't affect anybody in the book either. They didn't fall to pieces.
Well, then that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, no. I mean, I get it because we don't know who the necromancer... We're not really supposed to know who the necromancer is to begin with. And so, again, to make 3 movies, you have to flush something out. So in the book, it's like Gandalf mentions a necromancer. Well, hey, let's look at appendices maybe. I don't know if I don't read the appendices. I apologize. I am not the J.R.R. Tolkien person who read all the appendices in the books. I've read the books. I enjoyed the books. I will watch the movies. I don't know if necromancer is mentioned in the appendices at all. But it was something that they had to throw in there to flush it out. And then they give us, this is the prelude to what happens in Lord of the Rings. And I get it. I would just have loved one movie, one really good movie. That's all I wanted. Like, maybe they can get a good editor and take all this footage and whittle it down to 3.5 hours. I'll give you. Just make one movie, and you can cut out all the superfluous stuff.
This is a student film experiment.
On the necromancer, though, like, I was confused because, like, part of me, like, thought maybe it was Sauron, but also part of me thought it was the, like, King Wraith. Because when he has his palace that's all lit up in green, they talk about how he is involved in, like, necromancy. Like, he was involved with bringing the dead back to life. So, like, they kind of also hint that it could be him. So I was a little...
Except we see the eye.
Yeah, in this movie.
So,
which they did out of nowhere.
We see the eye. Hey, let me ask, did you ever read the books? Did you have to read any of them in, like, school or... Like,
never read any of them.
No, none at all.
Never.
Never read
them all?
Never read a book in my life.
You're lying. JT, you read them?
Any?
No, my uncle actually gave me the book for, like, Christmas one year, and I just never read it.
Oh, good for you.
Okay.
I did like the animated film, though. The animated film was awesome.
Which one? From Ralph Bakshi?
Yeah, the old score. They just sing everything.
Yeah.
Wonderful. My introduction to it was I saw a play of The Hobbit, and then I read the book. Yeah, so I did. And guess what? It was the whole book in one play. It was under 3 hours.
In one play.
And it was a full, complete play.
Look, was this in high school?
No.
Oh.
I still have The Hobbit in play form when I was under 10 years old.
Oh, well, there you go.
I think we focused on things like, for example, Stephen Fry's character. No, who's his follower? Because Stephen Fry plays the master.
He plays the master, and then his dopey lieutenant. Which why would
we kept entrusting him with so much?
That's what I don't understand. I was like, why do you keep doing that? Don't you? What?
He's a snake.
Also, does he remind you of anyone? Because he seems to remind me a little bit of Wormtongue, because they were styled identically. Anyone else?
Oh, that's true.
They're literally, I feel like they're almost wearing the same clothes. Like, they're both really pale. They have greasy hair. They're wearing all black. I was like, come on. Let's do a little bit of different costume design.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I couldn't figure out why they were entrusting this guy to do anything in their best interest.
He should have just been exiled.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, we're not going to kill you.
Or had some sort of arc. Maybe, like, finally, I don't know, saved
I didn't need
someone.
him to have an arc. I really didn't.
They wanted him to be funny.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
He was supposed to be there to be funny.
I didn't need him.
But the humor was, okay, so what's the humor? Like, okay, this guy just sucks?
Yeah, no. I mean, I couldn't figure out why the bowman, I forget that actor's name, Bard.
Well, that's his character name.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why he kept on entrusting him. Why he was giving him, like, big, especially responsibility to look after my family. Yeah. Here, you schmuck, look after my family. You've only shown that you're in this for yourself, but please take care of my kids. Like, I couldn't believe what was going on.
Bringing up Bard the Bowman, can we talk a little bit about him and what you guys thought of the opening sequence? Which I did not see this movie in 3D.
I did.
I didn't. Sorry, I don't know how it looked in that format, so I'm interested in your opinion. Because I told Demetri this before the show. I felt, one, that the first 10 minutes seemed very much like a video game. To me, it looked like a video game. And then also, I started getting a little bit almost of a headache. Because to me, for the first 10, 15 minutes, I don't know if this format I saw, it was almost like shaking. Like, I could feel the camera, like, moving. It didn't feel steady, and it didn't also feel like shaking. It just felt like it was twitching. And it bothered me. And I mean, I thought that some of the fire looked really good, but overall, I felt like that first scene looked like a video
I
game.
think this should have happened in Desolation of Smaug.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because because by the time you're going into this movie, now literally what was one of the biggest things for him, you know, right? He's the descendant of Dale who couldn't, you know, but who couldn't shoot down the dragon, but he started it, and so now you have the completion of this task, and it didn't feel that, you know, it doesn't feel as big. I don't know, because then realistically, I don't know, from an audience, I don't know, I watch these movies in this way where I'm like, and we've got 2 hours more to go. Right. So it's going to get trumped by all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
I liked the scene. Personally, I liked the scene a lot. I did see it in 3D and such, and I thought it looked great. Smaug was awesome. The strafing runs looked amazing. I caught the chaos in the city. With them being on the boats and the rivers, and then the bigger boats and the smaller boats. Luke Evans, who played Bard, I thought was really solid, actually. I really liked him. I liked that. Bringing the sun up there might have been a little bit too much, but I loved that scene, and I always love it when a villain is so cocky that he can't think that he can be brought down. Like when he finally brings him down, there's even on the dragon's face, he could say, "What? No!" Oh! But I really love that scene. So, and where it was, had they ended Desolation of Smaug that way, I don't know, maybe we would have just been left, we would have been left on a bigger note, but I think getting in and starting right where this one comes, right where Desolation left off, you give us a little bit of flashback, which I think is sort of smart, especially if nobody had seen Desolation. But you give a little bit of flashback to just bring you back into the story. Again, it's filler though, and that scene runs about, he's dispatched within the first 15-20 minutes of the film.
Can I ask you guys a question? Did any of you guys revisit the last film before watching this one?
Yes, but only in the background.
I watched it a couple months ago.
Okay, because I watched it literally the day before. The day I saw the film, I watched Desolation, and almost 3 hours later, it really kind of came together for me. Mm-hmm. I think that might affect the viewing, especially because the way the second one ended.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll be straight up, because I'll be straight up. Regarding the Hobbit series, I have not gone back and I have not revisited them once since their release. I do not own any version of them on Blu-ray, and they are on the first Hobbit and Desolation are on cable a lot. I just don't invest the time. Did
moments then, not having seen them in a while, did moments like him getting the sword back and let me rephrase that. Did moments like when Thorn gets the elvish sword back, and moments like when Bilbo looks at his handkerchief, did those resonate with you?
I'll be honest, not so much.
Okay,
Nope.
That because to me that I liked those moments in the film. There were these subtle, like when there's a point when Legolas he gives a nod to the sword, like, "Oh, why am I giving this back to you?" and throws it to Oakenshield, and it's this elvish blade that has its own name. It's famous for killing all these orcs that they took back in, I want to say, Desolation of Smaug. Maybe not. I can't remember which, if it was in 1 or 2. But he's
it would have been 2, because that's when they met.
He accused them of being thieves.
Yeah, that's 2.
And he takes it, so then he gets the sword back, and that's how what he eventually stabs him with. And then when we get to the handkerchief, that's I think he referenced he forgot his handkerchief in the first film, so it's a lingering on that, which is different than the book, because in the book he uses all of his handkerchiefs. But there's a lot of things that they did reference in the film that I really liked.
I'm sure they did. I'll say this too. When Lord of the Rings came out, the first one, the Fellowship comes out, I went in with high expectations. I was excited to see it. I saw it when bananas. I thought it was amazing. And I had gone back. I saw that movie in the theaters at the very least 3 to 4 times in the theaters. Couldn't wait for Two Towers. Couldn't wait. Two Towers comes out, same exact thing, and I would watch it here, and then I'd go back home in Boston, I'd see it again with loved it. Couldn't wait for Return of the King, same deal. These movies, the first movie, I was like, okay, well, what are they going to do? I saw the first movie, it deflated any excitement I had for the remaining movies that I just didn't. I knew I was going to watch them, but I had no urgency to go run like I did that first series.
Well,
So, and
I thought, one of the things that, I don't want people to... I enjoyed it, so I'll speak for myself.
No,
but at the very least, like, how they handled Thorin and Bilbo, I thought that was done really well. And him sneaking off and cutting this deal and like, hey, I'm not doing it for you guys. I happen to like these people. And also the, hey, what do you have in your pocket? And I'm going to plant this and it's going to grow into a big tree and I'm going to be reminded of this. And the fact that, as much as Thorin thought he understood loyalty, Bilbo was loyal.
I mean, we talked about how this wasn't really shown as shown as Bilbo's movie, but rather Thorin's. But what I will say is one of my favorite things about this movie were most of Bilbo's scenes. I thought that between what you mentioned, the acorn, that's a great scene. That's just because I thought that it wasn't. I thought it was going to be not the Arkansas. I thought it was going to be the ring. So they kind of fooled me twice. And then it's the acorn, which I thought was very sweet. I thought that when he has the end scene with Gandalf, to even earlier when you get him telling Gandalf, like, you can't tell me what to do, I'm going to go deliver the message.
Right.
Or to on the top of the barricade when he's like, I did it, and he owns up and he's like, I gave this to them and this is why. I thought all of those were very, very strong scenes.
I agree with you, and it's particularly the one. Let's talk about that scene a little bit. And Phil, like, you have to admit, I mean, that's a great scene because Bilbo's whole steadfastness and belief in these people and the dwarves after getting to know them, that scene was a good scene because it wasn't that he did it because he felt he had to. He honestly didn't think that Thorin would turn on him. He really believed in the honor that these dwarves had. And that's why he was like, you know what, I'm going to tell him. They were like, he's going to kill you. He goes, no, he won't. Because deep down inside, he's a good man. I know this. And he told him, and well, that didn't work out necessarily the way
at the moment.
So, but it was good because Martin Freeman was so good in that scene. And the scene that you had mentioned too with the acorn, and I do agree, and this is why I wanted more Hobbit. I wanted this to be seen through his eyes because it is, the story of the Hobbit is about the loss of innocence, about this big journey and your eyes wide open to this brand new world, and this Hobbit who has a realization, and he's got this great tale to tell, and he passes along this to Frodo, who is similar almost in age to when Bilbo went out on his adventure. So I wish there was just more of that. I may have been more emotionally invested into this story.
I have a question when we're on that. At the end when Gandalf says, you're a very small like, what does that mean? Remember, because he's like, I know you have the ring. Number one. Number two, remember that you're a small creature in a big world. And it's like, well, he pretty much just, even though he's a small creature, he did something pretty epic. I didn't know how to take that.
I'd have to revisit exactly how that line said, because at this point, I've only seen this, The Hobbit, Battle of Five Armies once in theaters. But there's a lot of references in The Lord of the Rings to, like, the differences that a small person can make. And, like, there's like lines that directly like say like more or less you're very small but you can make a very big change. So it'd be interesting if there's a parallel between that line.
No, he was talking to him. He was asking about the ring, and Gandalf knew that he was lying. I looked at it as you're very small in this universe, and just because you think you have this ring, that ring is nothing. Like you can get like
this line didn't stick out to me.
Yeah, like this is the way I interpreted it as is like there are many forces out there, even with you in that ring, that are much larger than you. Be careful with that, because you could bring yourself some much harm, because you, in the whole grand scheme of things, I like you, but you are small compared to what is really out there. How did you take it? Same way?
I didn't know how to take it. I really didn't. And that's why I'm asking. So I was like, what is he saying?
I don't remember it, so that's hard for me to say it. I have to like re-look at that scene. Yeah. But speaking to
And it was a bummer that they were selling off his house.
Yeah, that was funny.
That didn't happen, yeah.
Speaking to Martin's performance, I know we acknowledged it on top of the barricade as really strong. I also think that that's one of the scenes that I really acknowledge the writers for, because I think a lot of, you can make that scene, you can act it well from giving Bilbo safety.
Wait, which scene?
On top of the barricade. On top of the barricade, when he tells him that he was the one who took the Arkenstone.
Oh, yeah.
And you can very easily, he can give all of that same speech, and he can give it from far away, from safety, which is how we normally see it. We normally see people asking for forgiveness or trying to take some sort of like barter or explanation from safety, from...
Right.
He would have been alongside Gandalf, alongside the elves, saying, I did it, I'm over here, we want you to join us. But he went and he was amidst them from that love, and how that was written and staged, I thought was done very well.
No, I agree. Well. And to have the support, because the dwarves are like, dude, you have more faith in him than we do.
Yeah.
He's going to kill you. But it was, he did feel, I do get that. Bilbo felt as part of that team. He had traveled and had such adventures with these dwarves. So it was a very well done scene. I thought just like the acorn scene.
Yeah, awesome.
I thought that was another very well done scene, because it said so much, and there was a breakdown in Thorin for like 2 seconds. And then they were interrupted.
Well, can I ask you guys a quick question?
Yeah.
You're talking about Thoron. Scenes that I'm not sure really worked out. I'm not sure how they were trying to display it. The scene where he snaps out of it. Where, he's gone crazy with greed. He has this moment where he's walking on the silver lake that he made.
The golden lake.
Yeah. And he gets swallowed up by his own greed and gold.
What do you think Jackson was trying to show? Like, how did he come out of it?
I mean, I mentioned that scene a little bit earlier from my perspective. I mean, I don't think you guys have told your perspective on it yet. Where to me it just seemed too sudden. I think the dragon sickness was overplayed and not it didn't grow for me. It was consistently pushed in your face, and when we get to that vision, I just didn't feel like there was a spark that started it.
Yes, I agree.
I'm totally fine with how it was visually portrayed and the thoughts that were going on. I mean, I was a little over the whisper thing by that point, but I just thought that there wasn't something that lit that change.
Something horrible needed to happen.
Yeah,
because of your decision, Bilbo is now in
him being shocked that he almost threw Bilbo over the barricade, or him being shocked by something that said. There was nothing to me that was startling, that was abrupt, that made him rethink his decision. It was literally like him being reflective again, which we'd heard earlier in the film that he'd been doing for days amongst the gold.
Yeah, but I think when he was there, for at least for me, when he was there for days amongst the gold, that's when he started losing it. And that's when the dwarves were saying, Bilbo, he's been down there, he's just losing it. He's getting worse and worse all the time. But Bilbo's conversations with him, this is at least the way I took it, outside of Gandalf, and because all these voices were going on inside his head. And I just took it like, I think in large part, Bilbo played a large part in his saving, in his not going down the dark path of that greed and in making that decision, because I really do think that Bilbo's words and his innocence and his belief in the honor of the dwarves, he had strong dialogue with Thorin in those scenes, I felt. And, I just took it as that. I mean, I get it. It seemed, the turnaround seemed to come without the big, there was
without a push.
Without a push, yeah. I don't disagree.
What do you guys think?
I'll give you a scene I really like.
JT brought up that. What did you think about it, JT?
Yeah, I agree with what Sarah said. It kind of came out of nowhere. Like once he revealed that he was over it, I was like, wait, what did he do? He went for a walk. I thought, if anything, at first I read the scene as he was going madder. Like he was being sunken into it, like, oh my god, he's really about to flip. And then when he came out okay, I was like, what am I missing here?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll give you a scene I really liked, though. Dealing with Thorin, I thought that in the end, how you have that almost comic moment of you have this final battle, one of them's going to die, and of course they both end up dying, where he like throws the rock that he's been like trying to hammer him with at him, and he flips under the ice. And that to me was, and then you get a sigh of relief. I was like, okay, that was both clever and funny. And then it turned into creepy where he's floating underneath the ice and you're just waiting for him to like say boo. I was just like,
I know, and that bothered me.
oh, see, it did bother me because I was like, oh, please, stuff like that gets me.
I just knew that it was gonna happen.
You knew it was gonna happen, but
It's just story structure.
I liked it. I thought it looked really good.
No, it looked good, but did it look better than when which
him in
one?
the foot?
Yeah, no, but he just like it's like this isn't over yet. It's like, why are they having him float? It's like it was a long fight to begin with, and then he dispatched him very cleverly. And I'm like, oh well, it's much like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm thinking, oh, the Bumbles can't swim. I said they can't swim. I'm going, that's so clever. He's drowned, and then you see him floating, and I'm like going, he's coming back. But then I was trying to think, how are they going to dispatch Thorin? Because Thorin dies. So what's going to happen? So you knew he had to come back, and I
thought it looked really well. It looked really good, and I did like the flip under the ice moment, and I was waiting for the boo, so I was fine with it. I thought it was a little strange that you really couldn't see the injury once they both had been stabbed.
It's called PG-13.
I know, but still, like Thorin gets up, he's just been stabbed through the chest, and I'm like, is there a droplet of blood on his chest? I can't really see. It's
called, we just had a battle of 5 armies, and there wasn't we saw a lot of decapitations going on. I've seen more blood in Supernatural. It was sort of kind of.
Let me ask you that, when they get into the town, right? All the orcs.
Which when they get to the
Dale or Lake Town?
Is it called Dale?
Dale.
Yeah, I'm going to call it the stronghold where the humans are taking up.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Dale?
Yeah,
right.
I think so. The woman, yeah.
And
I like that.
And I like that. But it seemed like the least significant one. I mean, there was a tough decision to be made by the elf king. He says no more elvish blood will be spilled for this. Mm-hmm. But like in the whole movie, by that point, it just seemed like this portion of the battle seemed so insignificant.
Yeah,
but I did like it. I loved it.
Yeah,
which is why I want to talk about it.
Can I also say the motivation for the elves to go into that castle was basically to get some gems, which we were kind of just introduced to in the beginning of the film.
They were mentioned, and then also
they were mentioned.
Never
in the
gotten
films.
back. Also, there was no reward of all the Lake Town people getting any money.
Yeah. No.
Oh, that's funny. Weren't we going to war for this?
Exactly, I agree. Some of the motivations weren't played out well.
No,
none of them really were.
Oprah needed to get in there. You get some money, and you get the Ark and Stone.
I really liked Thorin's. Not Thorin. Oh, I really liked the Elf King's Thranduil's moose. I loved his moose that he was riding, which, by the way, or whatever it was, elk, some giant beast with giant antlers, which was ironically played by a horse named Moose, which I thought was funny. And I loved him cinematically. When he would sweep down the things and knock everything out. Loved it. I thought it was great. It really bothers me sometimes when all of the evil people seem to have the really good creatures. Mm-hmm. Why do they get
dwarfs
everything?
On pigs.
Dwarfs on pigs is great.
But I mean, the orcs have bats. They have cave-dwelling trolls sometimes. They have goblins. They have earth-eating worms.
Here's the thing. You're talking about all things that humans don't want to take. Like bats. Do we like bats?
I'm just saying.
Do we like goblins? Do we like earth eaters?
They always seem to have somewhat better creatures than ours. That's why I loved Battle of the Ents so much, because I was like, yes, we have good creatures too.
We have trees.
So I really liked
Some
the
of them
moose
were
elk. Exactly. No, but I love the Ents, and with the Eagles, we knew were going to come, so I was excited with them.
That was the Fifth Army, FYI. There's a lot of debate on who the actual Five Armies are.
We're still debating that. Well, I don't think I'm sold.
Okay, so I'm going to present my case. I think it's the orcs and all they encompass, the earthworms, everything.
You think they all exist together?
Yeah,
because
they call them in. They're
together. They have
so you're putting
one
all
purpose.
of the bad people in one sector.
I'm putting them. So
you got the orcs.
We got the elves. We got the humans. We've got the dwarves, and now at the end we've got eagles in parentheses shapeshifter. The shapeshifter cannot be his own army because by definition an army
is a shapeshifter.
He's the shapeshifter who turns into the bear.
Oh, yeah.
From the second movie?
From the second movie,
Okay.
who all of his people were destroyed by the orcs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't count him as an army, but
I don't count him as an army either. I just don't know. Like, do you count the wizards then as part of the Eagles?
They were, yes.
They weren't. No. They weren't even part of this fight. Let's face it.
Gandalf killed some people.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
But like they
a
were,
whole nother thing.
I don't know.
I mean, so what is it?
Radios
8
and-
armies?
So and we're talking like a ton of people, right? We're not people. We're talking a ton of bodies. Okay, whether you're an orc, whether you're an elf, whether you're human, right?
Guys.
So there's millions and millions and millions, but the whole battle seems to be hinged on 12 dwarves.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
Like 12 dwarves.
They're their own army.
I
You
guess,
didn't know
it's
that
like-
because they make all the difference.
Yeah, it's like
They're the
well
sixth player
with
off the
them.
bench.
Hey, it's like you need to come on. You need to help us out here. It's like, well, but you've got like a million people. Oh, 12 people. That's right.
Dimitri,
we have a chance.
and then 4 of those people
Go on.
leave.
Yeah. I was
Oh
just
my
like-
gosh, 12 people made all
Yeah,
the change
I
in the
was
world,
like-
and then 4 of them go somewhere else.
Well, by that point, it wasn't right at the time the Eagles came, but it was close to the time that the Eagles came. So it's like,
Well, not
and
really,
everyone's
if you think about it,
rallying
because
towards them.
Now, from the time they left the cave or the mountain, they
Mm-hmm.
come out. There's a lot of fanfare. It's like, hey, they're coming. And you would have thought that there would have been a whole army coming out of that mountain. No, it's just us. Hey,
here's
guys.
the thing.
And then they go off.
There is in sports. There is called the X Factor. They were the X Factor in this. It's like LeBron. If he wants to take control of a game, he'll just take control of the game.
Also, like, since we're
Okay,
like, since
no,
we're
I'll buy that. But you said the Eagles, they
They
was a
were the
lot of
double X
time.
Factor.
Yeah, but the Eagles, there was a lot of time because they come out. The 4 of them then go off to cut off the head of the snake.
That's
so there's
true.
that big fight, and that took a little while. Yeah.
What do you got to say,
they're the
Sarah?
X
Straight
Factor.
your mouth. You're disrespecting with
there's
that.
so many things to say. I mean, so many of these things just have interesting, horrible, imperfect timing. It's just amazing that the elves decide to wait a night and attack at dawn, even though they were going to attack the day before. But no, we're going to give them to dawn just so the other dwarves, led by Dane, can show up at the precise moment. Just so the Earth Eaters can show up at the exact same moment. Just so this other people from the north with the goblin mercenaries can show up just like right as there's so much coincidence in all this timing, and there's so much coincidence on like when Orlando Bloom and when Evangeline Lilly show up, and when and then it takes. We have a line from Dane outside who's fighting, being like, where is Thorin? And then and he seems to be like on the brink of death, and everyone thinks something's going on. And then we have like 10 minutes of discussion inside the mountain of them going through all these revelations. And I'm like, this doesn't add up. If you really took this long to have all these talks, everyone would be dead.
Well, there are a lot of people. My only thing about the elves deciding to go with Dawn, don't forget they gave Bilbo a chance to say, like, cause
You mean Bard?
A Bard. Like, you don't really think that. He's like, listen, I would rather not go to war. I'd rather not go to war. I would rather try this, and I think I can convince him to do it. And then when he couldn't do it, then it was like, okay, we go to war at dawn. Like it's usually I mean, I'm not a tactician, but you get them while they're sleeping, I guess. I don't know.
I just kind of feel like you get
knew
them.
that everything was going to come together all at once, and then they.
Yeah, I mean, there was no way. You knew the timing was going to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Okay,
why don't we talk?
this is the thing, though. I'm sorry, I'm going to say one more thing about this.
Then you're cut off for the rest.
I'm sorry. I'm being annoying. I know. But the thing is, yes, we had everyone show up at exact moments, and they've kind of dealt with this same appearance before, where we're talking about Helm's Deep, but at least it was foreshadowed. We knew that, like, look for me coming on look to the blah, blah, blah on this day.
Look to the east.
Yeah,
on the third
I don't
day or
know. I
whatever.
knew this was coming.
But, like,
To me,
that
it
at least
wasn't-
was, like, planning. And you had, like, some perspective of how long it takes to travel anywhere. And then in this one, it was like, oh, everyone can show up very quickly all the same
Well,
time.
they did say
even though they
word
have to
travels
travel.
fast.
Yeah, and well, again, I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. When they had all the different factions talking, everything was building up to they're all going to be there at the same time. Now, from a geography standpoint, I had no idea where the hell outside of Lake
I need a
Town
map.
And, yeah, but I'm gonna
You get one at the end.
I'm gonna make a
Not
reference.
really.
I'm gonna make a reference, and just bear with me from a geography standpoint. And I think geography is very important when you're going to do a movie like this. And I'm gonna throw it back. I'm gonna go to Avatar.
Okay.
Say what you will about the movie, loved it or hated it. One of my things, and one of my strengths that I believe that Cameron has is, especially in his writing, in Avatar, you knew where everything was. You had a geography of that planet. You knew where the floating mountains were. You knew where the army base was. You even had ideas to what the length and how far away things were from relationship to each other. You knew where the tree was. Like, you had a geography, so when things were being attacked, you sort of kind of knew where they, because he even draws out a map, a 3D map, as part of exposition, but it was done brilliantly. In this, I didn't have any ideas to, well, there's the snake head. We got to go up there, but they got up there pretty quickly, and then I don't know where other people are coming from. And, other than Lake Town, I knew Lake Town was right outside of the mountain because I could see it. That's it.
And the only excuse they give you, is that, Sauron or the Necromancer wants this stronghold because it's a central location. And so you're kind of like, okay, maybe things are easy to get to, but
I don't know.
We just had a whole 2 movies about journeying to get here.
Yeah, I don't know. But, one thing that, you had said we can go 10 hours nitpicking various things. No, look, we've all done it.
It's because we're passionate. I mean, here's the thing. Sarah is a Hobbitite for life. I'm going to keep creating words.
I don't think that's a word.
Hobbitite?
But
Hobbit, I don't know.
But let's
make up your favorite word in the comment below.
Can I just say I like Lord of the Rings?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure. But
cool.
I want to talk a little bit about this shoot, this undertaking, because I did open up. Again, look, I really do feel that Peter Jackson was put into a corner. I think he didn't have he could have said no, I guess. He wanted to go on to other things. Revisiting Middle-earth was not his highest priority. He was tired. He just won the Academy Award. He didn't have to prove himself to anybody.
And this is at the prime of his life too.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So you're not just making a movie and that's it. Yeah. You're giving up years.
Yes, and he had made one movie in the interim that wasn't terribly good. Right now, I forget the name of the movie.
King Kong?
No. Before King Kong, he had another movie that had come out that was based off, I think, a popular book or something. That wasn't.
Sarah's looking
great.
it
up. Please do. I forget the name of the title. Yeah, and he had King Kong, and he's making money off of Universal at King Kong, and The Lovely Bones. The Lovely Bones. That was the movie. And it says producer. I thought he directed Lovely Bones as well.
Oh, I'm under his producer credits. Under his
in any case,
credits.
But you're right. Prime of his life. He was ready to say goodbye. Guillermo, I trust in you. I will produce. I'm going to oversee this. I'm going to be right there by you, buddy. But I got other things that I want to do, and I do trust that Guillermo would have made a different movie. Mm-hmm. It would have been different in tone, perhaps. I don't know. I would have loved to have seen what he wanted to eventually do. So Peter Jackson gets. It's like, okay, Warner Brothers is like, Peter, you're the man. You got to do this. And he says, okay, you know what? I'm going to do the best I can. And, for this one, it was 266 days of principal photography and 10 weeks of pickups. We just talked about Exodus was 72 days
of principal.
72 days. This was 266 days.
That's what the reshoots are more than the principal photography.
No,
I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing, because there's so much out there, obviously from Lord of the Rings, and then now the previous 2 movies on Blu-ray. I always like kind of seeing his journey. I mean, he is a well-timed machine. He just keeps going. And when one of the thing ironically that stood out to me in particular, when he edits his movies, he watches on a big screen.
Yeah,
because that's the way it's going to be received.
Oh, and there is one. Oh yeah, I talked about the frame rate, and he did try to. The other thing too, I will at least commend, but let's just say, he tried to bring a brand new movie-going experience to movie-going audiences. He wanted to show The Hobbit in something new and fantastic, and this is where high frame rate was first touted. Now, I remember it coming out at CinemaCon. He came out, they did a huge presentation on high frame rate, and I remember coming out of that presentation going, okay, don't get it, don't really like it.
You weren't alone. That was a common reaction, I believe.
Yeah, but this was just footage. Like, we didn't get to see, and they did preempt us. They did preempt or set us up. They prefaced it by saying, look, this isn't finished product. Yes, it's going to look different, but trust us, your eyes are going to get used to it. And I remember when I went to the trade screening of the first Hobbit movie, and they did showcase it in high frame rate, it was just, I just remember, and to say that it stumbled out of the gate, because high frame rate was really being pushed. They were getting theaters to get the projectors to show it. It was in the advertising. Peter Jackson was talking about it a lot. Like, this was going to be a new wave of exhibiting film in a way that's going to not blow people out of the theater, and it didn't happen. So subsequently, the second movie, Desolation of Smaug, comes out. There's no mention. It came out in high frame rate. Very little mention of it. Same with Battle of the Five Armies. It's released in high frame rate, but there's very little mention of it. Although Peter Jackson said, well, we fixed those problems. We went back and we did color time and color code and do that. But I was like, well, it sounds like you're doing more work to have this great visual thing. But I commend and applaud him for trying. I like the risk taking. I like the fact that you're such a movie fan. You have so much passion for film that you want audiences to feel the same way, that you want them to come and experience something. I like the risk, because a lot of Hollywood studios, they don't like risk. And he took risk. He stumbled, admittedly, but you got to give the man props for trying.
I give him props for trying, but you also, the change of medium is one thing. I mean, with movies, the biggest risk you can take is tell an amazing story. Figure out how to connect with your audience. You're not creating a ride for Universal. Like, I have been to the King Kong thing, and it is awesome. It's
pretty cool.
It's really cool. But that's a different medium.
Absolutely.
Versus this.
Absolutely.
And so, no matter how, at the end of the day, a movie's going to be a movie. I don't think realistically you can't quite fully change it too much in its, you know what I mean?
No, but you can bring, like, 3D. Again, 3D is supposed to enhance the experience. And again, that was something that, again, because of greed, the studios started rushing, and they started converting everything that needed to be converted, and it came out awful at the beginning. Then, thankfully, and again, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to James Cameron, said, you know what, if you do it right, this is how it can look. And James Cameron, yet again, he revamps 3D, and he makes it a viable source that there was a verge that 3D was going to go away because it was so horrible and people were complaining so much. Now it's still in the mainstay. People still go to see it. It has a decent percentage of box office gross compared to the regular. And now when you're looking overseas, 3D is actually pretty big and viable, along with large premium prestige format films. So I get trying to do whatever you can. The movie-going audience, sadly, is being so fragmented. And now a report came out and said that even younger audiences are not going to the movies as often. And that's bugging me because, I always look at this business as cyclical. Next year, that's going to change dramatically, and people won't even, then people are going to be, yay, look at Star Wars did, look what Avengers did, look what Tomorrowland did, and stuff. So,
do you think that part of that is, just as very off topic, do you think part of that is that with 3D, there's obviously a markup in price? It's much more expensive, and unless you do have the occasion that you trust the filmmakers or you trust the material enough to spend that, because yes, Star Wars is going to bring in a ton of people in any large screen format, right. And like the more you can get people into it, the more they're going to spend because it's an event.
No,
it's an event that people want to be a part of.
Right.
But getting original material or just kind of your average movie on 3D, people don't want to spend that.
Well, but here's the deal. They're being way more selective than they used to be. So, and actually they are still spending They're not as much as when 3D first came out, because again, like anything, 3D, like it was in the 50s, 60s, 3D was a fad. The only difference today is like we have technology today. Now it's been proven where we can make it look good. It almost died. It almost died, and now but I think it's sort of kind of reached a plateau. It's still look, if it wasn't a moneymaker, studios would stop completely making their movies in 3D. You also have to look at overseas and what it's doing over there, and what it brings to. They're being far more selective in the movies. It's not every movie is coming out in 3D, and I think that's very
same
smart.
with IMAX.
Right.
Same with what movies get shown there.
And IMAX is a whole other Megillah as well, because you've got the true IMAX, which is very now it's becoming rare and could be, it could be extinct, But we have IMAX, we have other theater chains like Cinemark who has their XD. Anything that gets people to go to the movies to enjoy an experience. Like, for example, we saw Interstellar, right? In that format and presentation, it looked amazing. Like, I wouldn't have.
Hobbit. I did see. I did. You saw in 3D.
Yeah,
I saw in 3D,
and I did not.
Sarah did not. So boohoo for Sarah. But it was.
Yeah, we saw it in 3D.
I enjoy. Again, they didn't quite use the geography to its fullest benefit. But that's the like in 3D. You have an opportunity, and they used it. They used it overall well, but in terms of if I'm going to knock it for one thing, the geography could have been a little bit better to give me the spatial relationship.
Totally agree.
But everything else was great. And,
but if I was to say to 3D or not 3D, I'd say go see it in 3D. Yeah. Because it worked. It looked good. And you're not going to be cheaped out by Peter Jackson. I mean, he has a lot invested in this as well. So, that's why I give him credit for taking the risks and trying to form something to give something audiences what he believed at the time was cool to look at. And again, I'll go back now. James Cameron has never given up on high frame rate. And I know that when these next Avatar movies come out, I'm sure the technique and process will have evolved into such a way that maybe we will go ahead and like it. One other cool thing about Peter Jackson, no other filmmaker has single-handedly boosted a country's economy. According to New Zealand Tourism Board, international arrivals to Wellington jumped 87% in the 12 years since The Lord of the Rings. That's 87%.
Well, they have tourism surrounding it. They keep some of the sets. They have tours specifically made for Lord of the Rings fans.
Well, they have a Hobbiton.
Well, and it was crazy because for the making of the Hobbit movies, there was actually some trouble with New Zealand. Yeah. There was trouble with New Zealand where they almost... I'm going to say threatened. They threatened to film elsewhere because they were having some political difficulties with shooting again in New Zealand. And then people were like picketing and like, no, you have to shoot it here. Like citizens of New Zealand like were picketing against their government, being like, no, we want it here. This is one of our movies. This is also a movie that in New Zealand, if you go into a video store, they have sections based on countries. And one of the sections is New Zealand, and Lord of the Rings is under it. Yeah. It is not looked at as a U.S.-made movie. It is looked at as a New Zealand-made movie. And
I understand when like, catch this, like since 1998, Jackson has helped the local economy and Kiwi filmmakers by building 5 companies, including Weta Digital, outside Wellington, which collectively employ approximately 1,000 people year-round. More than 4,000 people were needed for the 3 Hobbit films. So what a filmmaker can say, if he never made these movies, not that New Zealand would have gone bankrupt, but this definitely helps their bottom line.
It's also
really cool.
Completely increased how much they film there.
Yeah, absolutely.
For other things as well. The studios and the capabilities of the studios that they have there, because of the technical requirements made for these films, their studios are so high tech and advanced that people are being drawn to shoot there because of what's been created.
Yeah. So I think that within itself is pretty pretty interesting and fascinating. I mean, he's got to be a local hero in New Zealand for what he's
he's a world hero. I mean, because of these movies,
absolutely.
He's Peter Jackson.
Yeah. And then you talk about for this film that, I mean, I know that there was a lot of talk about where people were shooting, how it was being shot. They did end up shooting a lot of it in New Zealand, also a lot of it at Pinewood Studios. I mean, if you look at it, Cate Blanchett, I believe, was on set for 8 days.
I'm sorry, whom?
Cate Blanchett.
Oh, yeah. Well, Cate Blanchett,
Galadriel.
like those scenes, Galadriel, Christopher Lee, and
Hugo.
Ian McKellen, but I definitely know Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
They could only film those scenes
in Pinewood
because of his health. They didn't think that they could travel.
So it was awesome that he came back and he did such a strong job. And I loved that they reprised this.
I'm sure. No offense to any of them. That's partly why it wasn't a much more epic. You know what I mean? Like it goes back to like the argument with the Expendables. Like you can only have these guys do so much, so you got to work around that.
It could be so.
But they didn't have to. Well, I know Cate Blanchett did not have to shoot that long.
No, I think it was 8 days for the entire thing for all 3 movies, and then you're done.
Yeah, but I look at that, and that's a lot of days for the amount that she was in. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, see, I thought she was in a ton. She has a lot of screen time, in my opinion, for that amount of days that is shot.
So,
but we've talked about Peter Jackson a lot. I think a big factor, especially in the Lord of the Rings trilogies, is the music. And for me, it's kind of hard because I was so distracted by the musical elements that I didn't necessarily like in this film. Because I love the score. I love his scores. I felt like this one, my main focus was that foreboding sound around the ring and the darkness that the movie took around that it was just distracting. And unfortunately, that's kind of the flavor I was left with, thinking about, like, I really did not like that they emphasized that so much.
But I mean, they took what was pre-existing for the most part. You know, obviously, I mean, you have, at this point, you have 5 films to build off of.
Yeah, and, getting Howard Shore, obviously, there's a continuity. It was, the score was fine. It was a Hobbit score. It was Howard
wasn't
Shore
anything super
back.
new, and so the only thing I took away was the one thing I didn't like.
Like I said, I
unfortunately.
don't own these movies. I own the Lord of the Rings soundtracks, but these I haven't gone back to that well for them. I can say, yes, it was the City of Dale. Just some little Five Armies facts. The City of Dale, where the humans live, was the largest outdoor set created for the trilogy. 1,600 square feet. It took 200 carpenters and artisans and more than 12 weeks to build. That's pretty cool.
You're building a city.
You're building a city. Costume designer Anne Maskey used dancer Margot Fontaine's dress from the ballet Ondine as inspiration for the gown worn by Cate Blanchett. That's pretty cool. Special effects company Weta Digital created 100 new individual orcs for this film. Individual orcs, each with a distinct helmet and other unique features, including pole arms, spears, swords, shields, teeth, and contact lenses. Again, there were so many orcs. How could I tell?
I know.
Right? And we were going to talk about Billy Boyd coming back. Mr. Pippin did the last final song. As the last credits roll, he did the last goodbye, is that it's called. So I thought that was pretty cool.
They love his voice.
Other fun facts that I will throw out there to add to Demetri's wonderful list is one of the most common props that was taken from the set. It seems that a lot of people have kept their swords.
Yes.
So who's got
some
the ring?
Of the actors,
Peter Jackson. It's one ring to rule them all.
But I know that Martin took his sword. I know that Thorin's sword was taken from set. Elven King's sword was taken from set. So that seems to be a popular prop that gets taken home. On top of that, Peter Jackson did make a cameo in this appearance, in this film, but there is debate about it. We have known that he was a carrot peddler in other films, but some people are speculating that the pictures that are hung above the mantle in Bilbo's home at the end, one of them is Peter Jackson.
No,
Supposedly.
I didn't see that.
Supposedly. I have to re-look because I didn't think about it till after the film, so I wasn't really keeping an eye out. But so it's something to look for if you are going to rewatch this again, that Peter Jackson
Just pop
does
your
have a
head in
cameo.
real fast to a movie.
Pop your head, yeah.
Right at the end.
But
Try to
supposedly
time
it might be one of the portraits. He also might be back as the carrot peddler. You have to look.
I don't know.
On top of that, I think those are the two that are coming to my mind at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots going on. I mean, Peter Jackson has also said something very interesting, and it has resonance, and it has resonance to movie going and such. Where he goes on to say that we're only about 4 or 5 years away from a generation that will have no memory or knowledge of how these films were released, which is like crazy to me. But again, when I think of Star Wars, there were many people who didn't necessarily, their first glimpse of Star Wars came from video. Like it came from, there was like no knowledge, and all they have is this 6-film box set, and they'll have to start at the beginning, and if they like it, they'll go through it to the end. And when you look at Star Wars, there are people who don't. Right now, it is a box set, and it's presented chronologically, like episodes 1 through 6. And that's the way you buy it. It's very interesting. But he's right. In years to come, that's how people.
But I think the key is, I think you just have to introduce people to them. It's easier if you introduce them when they're young, because like for me, I was introduced to Star Wars on VHS. I was also introduced to like all the Disney movies on VHS, but as a kid, I wasn't expecting a certain level of technology. So to me, being introduced to it so young, I didn't recognize that it was dated. I didn't recognize that, to me, all of these movies came out at the same time. They were all new when I was a kid. So I kind of feel like you just have to like introduce them when like expectations of technology aren't that high.
Oh, they're going to be on technology. No, I'm not talking about technology. I'm talking about there's going to be a whole generation of people out there who don't know that Lord of the Rings came first. Because the way that it's going to be presented to them is The Hobbit is the first story and Lord of the Rings is the second story. There's a whole generation, there's a whole bunch of people out there who are growing up right now that'll look at the Star Wars box set and won't necessarily realize that Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi weren't the first movies.
There's a huge difference in that one, though.
It's much more known, but still.
But this one, I mean, I get it. And that's why I'm saying, like, I really wish... If there's a prequel and an after, and they're just go with both, because they're gonna both be successful. You clearly made 3 movies out of 1 book.
Right.
You can do it again.
Yeah.
So start with the first one first next time.
Yeah, and we may have only gotten 1 movie if The Hobbit started out first. But I think they just wanted, to your point earlier, the thought process was The Hobbit is really thought of as a young... In today's world, they'd call it a young adult novel, but it was geared to younger kids. It wasn't geared for the college crowd that eventually, when they latched on to Lord of the Rings, it was definitely a college crowd. It was a different book, a different feeling. So to start off with what they think name-wise, to start off with The Hobbit, they were afraid. And so to your point earlier, when we started this broadcast, it was all about... Let's go what we know, what we think we can sell, and we're going to make a ton of money. And then they just dip back into the well.
But that's the big oops. That's like, well...
In a sense, I agree with you. And
again, but by the way, I mean, financially they succeeded, because now they got 3 movies out of 1, and of course people are going to go back.
How much did this one make so far?
This one...
156, I think.
156.
And it premiered in December in London. The 1st of December. New Zealand was December 11th, which I'm surprised it didn't premiere there.
Yeah. Well, the worldwide gross is 156 right now. Currently, it's at about 34 million domestically. So, but again...
Which is coming off of 2 days.
Right.
Barely.
And 2 weekdays, people after today, Friday, people are starting vacations. A lot of school... I'm just talking, I'm being very specific, location-centric. LAUSD after today is out for 3 weeks. Other parts of the country, like in Boston, they start on, I believe, the 23rd is the last day over there. and they have like a week off. So people are starting to go into their holiday vacations. The Christmas Day is a huge movie-going day. Mm-hmm. This movie is going to ride the wave of having holiday spirit and extra cash being given out, and we'll just see. We'll see how it holds up to the rest of. We'll see how it holds up to the first two.
Releases.
Yeah.
How much do you guys think it's going to make this weekend? We discussed this a little bit on Box Office Breakdown. I said around
along
60
with Sara Stretton.
Sara Stretton and who else?
Poof.
Ugh.
Nobody knows.
No one knows, but if you did know, that would be the despicable sound of Finstock. Haha.
So check
He's
out
not here
Box
to fight
Office
me.
Breakdown if you don't know. But Sarah, what did you predict?
I predicted, what did I say, 75? I think I said 75.
Yeah, you said close to 70.
Yeah.
Dimitri, what are your thoughts
just
on this?
based on, I think it's the last one. I think people want to go see it for memory's sake.
In the low 70s. I mean, the only thing that could potentially hurt it is we are the very last weekend of Christmas shopping. So people may not want to divest 2.5 hours of their time when they can be spending money.
It could also be travel.
Travel.
Here's the thing, because
what?
people are getting out Friday and they're
A lot
on
of
flights and
right.
whatever, and there's.
That's why I'm leaving on Monday.
I look at the shopping this way, though. When you go to the mall and there's a movie theater attached, and all of the guys seem to be sitting outside because their wives are inside, they can go see a movie while they shop, and they'll see this.
Yeah.
Honey, you got 3 hours. Go.
You get 3 hours. You get 3 hours.
Anyway.
So, well, it got a 62% on Rotten Tomatoes thus far. It's at an A- on Cinema Score, which means the word of mouth is going to carry it through. The past Hobbit films have done well during this time period. Right now,
And they've been consistent.
there's not much yet. They don't have, in this realm, in this genre, that there isn't much competition. There isn't too much competition going on for them right now, anyways. I mean, I don't see anything that's... I don't see anything that's going to really...
Pull the same people.
And it's certainly not going to be Exodus.
No,
Anyway.
I don't think so.
And the thing is, if it should be any movie that's out right now, it should technically be Exodus, but it won't do it.
It won't do it. Anything else you guys want to talk about? I mean, here's the thing. We can, like I said, we can go on for hours. There's so many ways to talk about this. There's so many ways to dissect this, but I want to hit on anything that you guys really want to talk about.
Anything I really...
So you seem to have a lot to say, Sarah.
I
so
have
all
had a
of
lot
a
to
sudden
say,
you're quiet.
but when you wrap things up, it's hard.
I'm not rapping it. I just want to know.
The only thing that was going through my mind as you were saying that was like, does anyone... This is a big thing for me, especially when it comes to epic movies like this. I kind of feel like there's something that I should be able to quote more. Like some sort of line, emphasis, anything.
I mean, as unhitting as it was, I do think because the love was real. That stands out to me. Maybe for the wrong reason, but
no. But it's like even in Desolation of Smaug, you could even get like where he's going out, and you get that big epic line about how he's going to burn everything. Got it. This one, did I get a line? Did I get one?
I didn't get a line in all three.
I
can't
either.
quote something from Desolation of Smaug, and I couldn't quote you from the first Hobbit.
Not even Desolation. Come on, when he goes, "I am fire."
Yeah,
I am
and
death.
and then he goes out. That's epic and that's wonderful.
Right.
But did you, JT, anything from this one?
No, but they use a lot of the ones from the older trilogy, like My Precious. That came up a lot. Precious, the word precious. So
And you almost got "You shall not pass." It was like left out by one word. It was
Was
like
it one?
I swear, I'm gonna have to rewatch it. But I swear, as they were like going into battle, you get "You shall not."
No, see, I did not hear that.
There's a something. I want to
have
know
to
what
check
it
it
is.
out.
I am gonna rewatch just to figure out what that line was, because I literally was like, wait, was this about to happen? Are we about to repeat?
I did like the Bowman line, like
Which one?
Bard the Bowman?
No,
that's
no. I'm talking about any of Smaug's lines are for the most part catchy. He's like, "Who are you, Bowman?
Yeah.
How dare whatever he was saying." I mean, it's more of a memorable moment than because I can't actually
It's a great
remember the
moment.
quote.
Yeah.
But
we do have another factor that we haven't. Opening up this week too, we have Night of the Museum, then we have Annie. So those are two very kid-friendly movies that going to.
Yeah, but Hobbit.
No, hey, listen. I'm not saying that Hobbit's not going to be number one. It's going to be number one. It'll go through the holidays and play throughout. I'm not sure what other outside of Night of the Museum and Annie, I don't know what other kid fair is opening up on December 25th. I mean, you ain't taking the kids to American Sniper. I don't think they're going to see Big Eyes.
Into the Woods.
Into the Woods, perhaps. Yeah, you can get Into the Woods. So it's it's going to be an interesting holiday season now too. We had mentioned in Exodus with taking out of the interview, your comedy is gone. So maybe
here's what I like. If you're listening to this kind of in the moment, meaning right around the time, if you're listening to this in 2016, I don't know what to do for you, but try to have some fun with it. Why don't you go see The Hobbit, then come back, maybe see 1 and 2, then go see this one again, and then come back and see Lord of the Rings. Do it up.
Sure.
Can I say real quick to Demetri's point about the comedy? I think Top 5, which is getting rave reviews, I think that's going to pick up a lot of the slack that interview is going to leave.
Yeah, it could be, but it's not unless it goes as wide as the interview is going to go. It'll pick up a lot of slack, and it's getting a lot of buzz right now. True, but again, there's still a part of America that doesn't know that movie exists yet.
I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, so
I think it's going to swell up. I mean,
I'm not saying it's not going to swell up, but I'm just saying that right now, it might not make the top 5.
No, it was in the top 5 this week, right? Sarah, it was number 5.
It was number
5.
Yeah, no, I think it was number 4.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think it was 4.
I think top 5 hit the 4th spot
theaters.
and 979 theaters or something like that.
So
JT, save your show for Monday.
Yeah,
JT, save your box office
we won't
breakdown
be there
show.
on Monday, so we're trying to get it in now.
But a lot is not going to be. Again, a lot of America, it hasn't been unleashed on the world yet. But I don't disagree. But they're going to have to ramp up their advertising. So
Fair enough.
It'll be good.
I just hate predicting stuff, especially since I want to keep it a little evergreen. Anyway,
evergreen.
Okay.
No, you know what I mean. The 2016 viewers do not care about opening weekend of 2015.
Well, but I also look at us as I
it's
look
a part
at
of
whatever
history.
we do. It is a part of film history and what we're talking about and later on down the line. What's great about our show, folks, is that it's not just done after the movie comes out, because there is a longevity. There is VOD when it comes on demand. There's cable, there's Blu-ray, there are the extended versions that'll eventually come out in all of those formats. So all the people who may have missed it at a theater or may have rewatched it at home, you can come on back and then take us apart 5 years from now, going, hey, I just finally got around to watching The Hobbit, watched your show. You sucked. What the hell? Why did you hate it so much? So, but who knows? There's a great longevity in us, and maybe somebody will look back and reference something about a gross, and who knows what the digital and distribution landscape 5-6 years from now is going to look like.
Absolutely. Well, I feel satisfied that we've covered the important stuff. Sarah, can you confirm that? Because I know you had the 6 questions to begin that Hobbit didn't answer for you, so I don't want to be the podcast that doesn't answer the important stuff.
I mean, I'm sure I could drone on about who I thought overacted and who I thought did a good job, and more of the scenes I liked and didn't like, and the references that I thought were made well or badly. But overall, I'll give you my lasting impression, which is that I'm going to miss Middle-earth and its depiction on film. After these 6 movies, I thought Battle of Five Armies made sense for the Hobbit trilogy. It did not hit the mark as tall as Lord of the Rings. It's very hard. It's very hard because I have so many opinions on this movie. There are good scenes and bad scenes, and I will watch it again.
Okay.
I'm glad it's over. Peter Jackson, thank you. Move on. I'm happy. I'm glad that I'm glad we're leaving Middle Earth. I mean, he can do other things. These movies were not up to standard. They weren't great movies. There wasn't one movie of this series that I can go, that was great, can't wait to see it again. And like I said, I don't own any of them. I'm not invested in these movies. He did it with The Lord of the Rings. He had an insurmountable task, as I mentioned, to get these movies done. This should have been one movie. I would have given him 2, had it been Guillermo del Toro. One movie could have taken care of this. I really feel that from an audience standpoint, this thing was stretched out way too long. And it didn't deliver. There's a lot of been there, done that. We've seen this before. You're not showing me anything that's distinct. In The Lord of the Rings, I felt for the characters who were part of that fellowship. I cared for them a lot. In this Hobbit movie, these dwarves were interchangeable. I didn't get a sense. I didn't get their names. I knew that this guy with the gray beard, he seemed like he was he seemed likable. But I had a major problem that this thing was way too far stretched out, and I'm glad it's over. I'm glad next year there won't be a Hobbit movie.
Fair enough. Well, if there's anything that, obviously there's so much to talk about, so feel free to chat with us in the comments below. Again, it's one of those things that because the discussion is going to be as such, because we love we love the source material, we love this, and so there's a lot of passion one way or the other for it.
Well, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts is, I was excited to see it. I was excited to go, and it's one of those things that, like, you're like, to Sarah's point, it's, what hasn't hit is that it's over. It's over. Now, the great part is you can revisit it at any time you want, or with the Blu-rays and all that. But never will you, for the most part, be able to go back to a theater and experience in that way, and you'll never have that first experience of Middle-earth ever again.
So sad.
Unless a revival house goes and does a Lord of the Rings trilogy. But why would you? Who would go to a Hobbit trilogy? Who would go to a Hobbit marathon that didn't include Lord of the Rings? And if you sold them side by side, I'm willing to bet that the Lord of the Rings trilogy would far sell out the Hobbit trilogy.
Oh, I would agree with that.
So
100%.
Anyway,
you never know. They could. It's been done before. They've done it with Star Wars.
Well, thank you again for joining us on The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. Today was the Battle of the Three Hosts. And we have Demetri. What are we listening to right now, so people get an explanation?
Oh, this is a classic ditty from like the '60s. This is Leonard Nimoy singing about Bilbo Baggins, which is go YouTube it. Just Leonard Nimoy, Bilbo Baggins. This is while he was filming Star Trek. I don't know who drugged him to do this, but it's forever on YouTube. Once you've seen it, you can't unwatch it. It's hysterical.
Well, thank you again for joining us on Anatomy of a Movie. Definitely check out some other Popcorn Talk Network shows, whether Box Office Breakdown with JTE and the lovely Sara Stretton. We have Marvel movie news. We have DC movie news. We have Meet the Movie Press. We have Jedi Alliance for all things Star Wars. We don't have a Star Trek show yet. We have Profiles with Malone and Mance. We have Guilty Movie Pleasures. And so, it's been a wonderful, wonderful dissection. Thank you guys, as always, and keep the conversation going right into 2015, 2016, and so on and so forth.
My colleagues, Happy New Year. See you next year.
Agreed.
He was chased by wolves, lost in the forest, escaped in a barrel from the Elfins Hall building.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.